The gold wedding band glinted in the harsh afternoon sun as Violet Jenkins stood outside the general store in Keeler, California, her trembling fingers holding the only thing of value she had left in this world. It was August of 1883, and the small mining town nestled in the Inyo Mountains had seen better days. The silver boom that once made Keeler prosperous was fading, and with it, the hope of many who called this dusty outpost home. Violet had arrived here 3 years ago as a bride of 19, full of dreams and love for Thomas Jenkins, a hard-working miner who promised her the world. But the mine had taken him 6 months ago in a cave-in, along with 4 other men, leaving her alone at 22 with nothing but memories and mounting debts. The ring felt heavy despite its delicate nature. The simple band Thomas had placed on her finger with such tenderness, now her last resort against starvation. She had not eaten a proper meal in 4 days, surviving on whatever scraps she could find or the occasional charity from neighbors who were struggling themselves. Her pride had kept her from this moment for weeks, but hunger was a powerful motivator, and pride could not fill an empty stomach. Violet pushed open the door to the general store, the bell above jingling cheerfully in stark contrast to the weight in her heart. Mr. Henderson looked up from behind the counter, his weathered face creasing with concern when he saw her. "Mrs. Jenkins," he said quietly, acknowledging her presence. "Mr. Henderson." Her voice was steadier than she felt. "I was hoping you might be interested in purchasing this." She placed the ring on the wooden counter between them, the soft clink of gold against wood seeming to echo in the quiet store. The shopkeeper picked up the ring, examining it with practiced eyes. "It is a fine piece, Mrs. Jenkins. Simple but real gold. I could give you $10 for it." $10. It was perhaps fair, but it represented so much more than mere currency. It was the physical embodiment of Thomas's love, the symbol of vows spoken before God and community, the last tangible connection to the life she had built and lost. "I need 15, she heard herself say. "Please, Mr. Henderson, I have not paid rent in 2 months and I need food." The shopkeeper's expression softened with sympathy, but business was business. "I am sorry, Mrs. Jenkins. 10 is all I can offer. Times are hard for everyone." Behind her, the bell jingled again, and Violet felt rather than saw someone enter the store. She kept her eyes on the ring, fighting back tears that threatened to spill. "I will give you $50 for it." The voice was deep and unfamiliar, carrying an accent she could not quite place, something from the East perhaps, refined yet weathered by the western frontier. Violet turned to see a tall man standing just inside the doorway, his silhouette backlit by the afternoon sun. As he stepped forward, she could make out his features more clearly. He was perhaps 28 or 30, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, strong features that spoke of both hardness and gentleness, and blue eyes that seemed to see right through her thin facade of composure. "That is far too much, sir," Mr. Henderson protested. "The ring is worth perhaps 12 at most." "Then I am overpaying," the stranger said simply, his eyes never leaving Violet's face. $50 seems right to me." Violet found her voice, though it came out shakier than she intended. "I cannot accept charity, sir." "The ring is not worth $50, and we both know it." "It is worth that to me," he replied, stepping closer. His clothes marked him as a cowboy, worn denim pants, dusty boots, a leather vest over a blue cotton shirt, and a hat he now removed respectfully. "My name is Cole Zimmerman. I have just come to Keeler to start a horse ranch in the valley below. I passed the Owens Lake on my way in, fine country for raising horses." "Mrs. Violet Jenkins," she replied automatically, then corrected herself with some difficulty. "Just Violet Jenkins now, I suppose, Mrs. Jenkins," Cole said firmly, acknowledging her status as a widow. "I would like to buy your ring for $50. I have the money and I believe it is worth every penny." "But why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "You do not know me. This ring holds no value to you." Cole's expression grew thoughtful. "My mother died when I was 15. My father gave away all her things within a month, said keeping them only brought pain. I have regretted not having something of hers to hold onto ever since. This ring represents love and commitment, and those things are always valuable, regardless of the gold content." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a leather wallet, counting out bills with practiced ease. Besides, a man starting a new life in a new place could use a reminder of what he is working toward. Love, family, a home. Your ring will remind me of that. Violet stared at the money he placed on the counter, more cash than she had seen in months. It would pay her debts, buy food, give her time to figure out what to do next. But accepting it felt wrong somehow, too much like charity disguised as commerce. "Take the money, Mrs. Jenkins," Mr. Henderson said softly. "Pride is cold comfort on an empty stomach." She reached for the bills with shaking hands, and as she did, her fingers brushed against Cole's. The contact was brief but electric, sending an unexpected warmth through her that had nothing to do with the summer heat. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching the money to her chest. "You have saved my life today, Mr. Zimmerman." "Cole, please," he said, pocketing the ring carefully. "And I hope I have done more than that. I hope I have given you a chance to start fresh as I am trying to do myself." Violet looked up at him, really seeing him for the first time. There was kindness in his eyes, but also loneliness, a mirror to her own. This was a man who understood loss and was trying to rebuild his life, same as she was. "Where is your ranch?" she found herself asking, surprising herself with her boldness. "About 3 miles south of town in the valley. Just purchased the land from a family heading back east. There is a house, needs work and some outbuildings. I have 10 horses arriving next week from Nevada, good stock. I plan to breed and train them, sell to the ranches and farms in the area." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "I will need help, actually. The previous owner left the place in rough shape. I do not suppose you know anyone looking for work. Cooking, cleaning, general ranch work. I can pay fair wages." The offer hung in the air between them, and Violet felt her heart begin to race. It was improper. A widow working alone for a single man, and the town gossips would have a field day. But it was also an opportunity, a chance to earn her way honestly rather than relying on the charity of neighbors or the meager sewing work she could occasionally find. "I might be interested," she said slowly. "What sort of wages are you offering?" "Room and board, plus $20 a month," Cole replied. "There is a small cabin on the property, separate from the main house. It needs repair, but it would give you privacy and independence. You would help with meals, keeping the house, and whatever else needs doing. I am not much of a cook myself, and I will be too busy with the horses to manage everything alone. $20 a month, plus a place to live." It was more than generous, more than she could hope to earn in town with her limited skills and the scarce work available. "I would need to think about it," Violet said, though her mind was already racing ahead, calculating possibilities and consequences. "Of course," Cole said. "I am staying at the boarding house on Main Street for the next few days while I get supplies and hire some men to help with the repairs. If you decide you are interested, you can find me there." He tipped his hat to her, nodded to Mr. Henderson, and walked out of the store, leaving Violet standing there with $50 in her hands and more questions than answers swirling in her mind. "That is an unusual man," Mr. Henderson observed. "Came in yesterday, paid cash for a huge order of supplies. said he made his money driving cattle north to the railheads, saved every penny for 5 years to buy his own place. Violet tucked the money into her reticule, her mind still on Cole Zimmerman. Is his offer respectable, do you think? Or am I foolish to even consider it? The shopkeeper stroked his beard thoughtfully. In normal circumstances, I would say a single woman working for a single man would be improper. But these are not normal circumstances, Mrs. Jenkins. You need work, he needs help, and he offered you separate living quarters. If you are worried about your reputation, you could always ask Mrs. Patterson to come out once a week as a chaperone of sorts. She does washing for several of the ranchers anyway. It was practical advice, and Mrs. Patterson was a respectable widow herself, well regarded in the community. Having her presence, even occasionally, would help silence the worst of the gossip. I need to eat first, Violet said, realizing her hands were shaking from more than just nerves. And think clearly. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. She purchased bread, cheese, dried beef, some beans, and coffee, luxuries she had not been able to afford in weeks. The shopkeeper added a few extra items without charging her, and she was too grateful and hungry to protest. She walked back to her small, rented room above the seamstress shop, climbed the narrow stairs, and finally allowed herself to eat. The food tasted like heaven, each bite reminding her how close she had come to true desperation. As she ate, she thought about Thomas, about the life they had planned together that never materialized. He had been a good man, hardworking and kind, if not particularly ambitious or romantic. Their marriage had been based on mutual respect and gentle affection rather than passionate love, but she had been content with that. His death had shattered her world, but perhaps it was time to build a new one. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Violet made her decision. She would accept Cole's offer, work hard, save her money, and create a future for herself. It was practical, sensible, and gave her a path forward. The fact that Cole Zimmerman had kind eyes and a generous spirit had nothing to do with it. She told herself firmly, ignoring the flutter in her chest when she remembered his touch. The next morning, Violet dressed in her best dress, a simple gray cotton that had seen better days but was clean and mended, and walked to the boarding house. Mrs. Chen, who ran the establishment with quiet efficiency, directed her to the dining room where Cole was finishing breakfast. He stood when he saw her, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "Mrs. Jenkins, good morning. Would you like some coffee?" "Yes, thank you," she said, settling into the chair he pulled out for her. The gesture was courteous and natural, speaking of good upbringing despite his rough cowboy exterior. Mrs. Chen brought coffee and a plate of eggs and biscuits without being asked, and Violet realized she must look as hungry as she felt. She had eaten well last night, but months of deprivation could not be undone in one meal. "I have thought about your offer," Violet said, wrapping her hands around the warm coffee cup. "I would like to accept if it is still available." Cole's face lit up with a genuine smile that transformed his serious features. "That is wonderful news. When can you start?" "Whenever you need me. I have very few possessions to move, and my rent is paid through the end of the week." "How about in 3 days? That will give me time to get the cabin fixed up properly for you, make sure it is livable. I have some men starting work on the main house today, and I will have them focus on the cabin first." They discussed the practical details over breakfast. Violet would have Sundays off, plus time in the afternoons for her own pursuits. Cole would provide all food and supplies, and her wages would be paid on the 1st of each month. He seemed genuinely concerned about her comfort and privacy. Going out of his way to ensure she understood the arrangement was purely professional. Yet there was something in the way he looked at her, a warmth that went beyond employer and employee, that made her heart race in a way she had not experienced even with Thomas. She pushed the feeling aside. It was too soon, too complicated, and too risky to entertain such thoughts. Over the next 3 days, Violet settled her debts, gave notice to her landlady, and packed her meager belongings. The news of her new employment spread through the small town quickly, and as she had expected, opinions were divided. Some thought it was a practical solution to her difficulties, while others whispered about impropriety and worse. Violet held her head high and ignored the gossip, focusing instead on the future. On the morning of the 4th day, Cole arrived with a wagon to collect her and her things. The ride out to the ranch took less than an hour, following a rough track that wound through the sagebrush-dotted landscape. The Enyo Mountains rose dramatically to the west, their peaks still holding snow despite the summer heat, while Owens Lake shimmered in the distance to the south. The ranch itself was more impressive than Violet had expected. The main house was a sturdy wooden structure with a wide porch, in need of paint and repair but fundamentally sound. Several outbuildings included a large barn, a stable, and the cabin that would be her new home. Men were already at work on various repairs, their hammering and sawing filling the air with industrious noise. Cole helped her down from the wagon with a steadying hand at her elbow. "The cabin is ready for you. I had them work on it first, like I promised. Come, I will show you." The cabin was small but charming, with one main room that served as living space and bedroom, plus a tiny kitchen area with a wood stove. Someone had cleaned it thoroughly. The windows sparkled, and fresh curtains hung at the windows. A simple bed frame held a new mattress. There was a table with 2 chairs, a rocking chair near the fireplace, and hooks on the wall for hanging clothes. "I hope it suits," Cole said, setting down the box of her belongings. "I know it is not much, but it is yours. You can fix it up however you like." Violet walked slowly around the space, touching the curtains, testing the mattress, running her hand over the smooth table surface. It was more than she had dared hope for, a home of her own, humble but clean and private. "It is perfect," she said, meaning it. "Thank you, Cole, for everything." He smiled, that transformative expression that lit up his whole face. "I am glad. Take today to settle in. Tomorrow you can start with whatever you feel comfortable doing. No rush, no pressure. I want you to be happy here, Violet." The use of her first name sent a little thrill through her, an intimacy that was probably just his casual Western manner, but felt personal somehow. After he left, she unpacked her few possessions, hanging her 2 dresses on the hooks, arranging her hairbrush and hand mirror on the small shelf near the bed, placing her Bible and the single book of poetry she owned on the table. Looking around the cabin with everything in its place, Violet felt something she had not experienced in months: hope. This was a new beginning, a chance to build a life on her own terms. Whatever came next, she would face it with courage and determination. The next morning, Violet woke before dawn, a habit from her years as a wife when she had risen early to prepare Thomas's breakfast before his shift at the mine. She dressed quickly, braided her long brown hair, and made her way to the main house through the cool morning air. The sky was lightening in the east, painting the mountains in shades of pink and gold. The kitchen was as she had left it the previous evening when she had done a quick survey of the house. It was large and well-equipped, though dusty from disuse. She built up the fire in the stove, filled the kettle from the pump, and set about making coffee and breakfast. Cole appeared just as the sun crested the mountains, looking surprised to find the kitchen warm and fragrant with the smell of coffee and frying bacon. "You did not have to start so early," he said, accepting the cup of coffee she handed him. "I am used to it," Violet replied, dishing up eggs and bacon onto 2 plates. "Besides, I imagine you have a full day ahead of you. The men will be arriving soon and everyone works better on a full stomach." They ate together at the kitchen table, an oddly domestic scene that felt both comfortable and strange. Cole told her about his plans for the ranch, his voice animated as he described the horses he would breed, the training methods he had learned, his dreams of building a reputation for quality stock. "I spent 5 years working cattle drives," he said, pouring himself more coffee. "Saw most of the West from Texas to Montana. Good work, honest work, but dangerous and lonely. I saved almost every penny because I knew what I wanted, a place of my own, horses instead of cattle, and a chance to put down roots." "Why Keeler?" Violet asked, genuinely curious. "It seems an unusual choice. The mining is declining and the town is shrinking." "Exactly why," Cole replied. "Land is cheap and I do not need a booming town. I need good grazing, water, and access to markets. Owens Valley has all of that. Plus, it is beautiful country. I have seen enough dusty plains and crowded cow towns to last a lifetime." As the days turned into weeks, Violet settled into a comfortable routine. She woke early, prepared meals, kept the house clean, and helped with various ranch tasks. Cole hired 3 men to help with the heavy work. An older cowboy named Dutch who had worked ranches all his life. A young Mexican vaquero called Miguel who had a gift with horses. And a former soldier named Jim who needed a fresh start after the violence of his past. The horses arrived as scheduled, 10 beautiful animals that Cole handled with expert skill and obvious affection. Violet loved watching him work with them, his patience and gentleness revealing a side of him that matched the kindness she had first seen in the general store. Mrs. Patterson did indeed come once a week to help with the washing, her presence providing the respectability Violet needed. The older woman approved of the arrangement, noting that Cole treated Violet with perfect propriety and that having her own cabin maintained proper boundaries. But despite those boundaries, Violet found herself increasingly drawn to Cole. It was not just his handsome features or strong build, though she was not blind to those attributes. It was his character that captivated her, his fairness with the hired men, his gentle way with animals, his quick laugh and thoughtful conversations in the evenings when the work was done. They fell into a habit of sitting on the porch after dinner, watching the sun set behind the mountains while they talked about everything and nothing. Cole told her about his childhood in Missouri, his mother's death from fever, his father's subsequent bitterness, and his decision to head west at 18 to make his own way. "I have not seen my father in over 10 years, Cole admitted one evening in September, as the air finally began to cool from the summer heat. "I wrote him when I bought this place, told him I had made something of myself. He never wrote back." "That must hurt," Violet said softly, remembering her own father who had died when she was 16, before she met Thomas. "It did at first," Cole acknowledged. "But I have learned that family is not always about blood. It is about who shows up for you, who cares about your happiness and well-being. My father stopped being family the day he gave away my mother's things and told me to stop crying like a baby." Violet shared her own story in return, the good parts and the difficult ones. She told him about her marriage to Thomas, honest about the fact that it had been more practical than passionate. "I cared for him deeply," she said, staring out at the darkening sky. "But I do not think I was ever in love with him, not really. Is that terrible to admit?" "It is honest," Cole replied. "And there is nothing wrong with marrying for practical reasons as long as both people are kind to each other. It sounds like you and Thomas had a good partnership." "We did," Violet agreed. "But sometimes I wonder what it would be like to feel that spark people write about in poetry, that all-consuming passion. Cole was quiet for a long moment, and when Violet glanced at him, she found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I think," he said slowly, "that the best relationships combine both. Partnership and passion, practical compatibility and that indefinable spark. The lucky few find someone who offers all of it. Have you ever been in love?" The question was bold, probably too personal, but the twilight and the intimate conversation made her brave. "Once," Cole said. "When I was 22, working on a ranch in Wyoming. Her name was Sarah and she was the owner's daughter. We snuck around for months, convinced we were meant to be together. But when I asked her to marry me, she laughed. Said she could never marry a common cowboy, that she had been passing time until a suitable man came along. She married a banker from Cheyenne 3 months later." "I am sorry," Violet said, hearing the old pain in his voice. "Do not be. It taught me an important lesson about knowing my own worth and not settling for someone who does not see it." He turned to look at her directly. "You are easy to talk to, Violet. I have not opened up to anyone like this in years." "You are easy to talk to as well," she replied, her heart racing at the way he was looking at her, as if she was something precious and rare. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then Cole stood abruptly, breaking the spell. "I should let you get your rest," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Thank you for another excellent dinner and for the conversation." Violet watched him walk into the house, closing the door firmly behind him, and wondered if he felt the same pull she did, the same dangerous attraction that was growing stronger every day. October arrived with cooler temperatures and the first hint of winter in the mountain peaks. The ranch was thriving under Cole's management. The horses were settling in well, and he had already received inquiries from several nearby ranches about purchasing trained animals. The repairs to the house and outbuildings were nearly complete, and the whole place had an air of prosperity and permanence. Violet's role had expanded beyond cooking and cleaning. She helped with the books, her neat handwriting and good head for numbers making her invaluable for tracking expenses and income. She learned to handle the gentler horses, feeding and grooming them under Miguel's patient instruction. She planted a vegetable garden near the cabin, putting in winter crops that would sustain them through the colder months. The work was hard but satisfying, and for the first time since Thomas's death, Violet felt truly alive. She was no longer just surviving but building something meaningful. The only complication was her growing feelings for Cole, which became harder to ignore with each passing day. She knew he felt something too. She caught him watching her sometimes with an expression that made her skin tingle. Their hands would brush during innocent interactions, and the contact always lingered a moment too long. Conversations that should have been mundane became charged with unspoken tension. But Cole maintained strict propriety, never crossing the invisible line between employer and employee, between two people who happened to share a living space and two people who might become something more. The situation came to a head on a Saturday in late October. The hired men had gone into town for their weekly night off, leaving Cole and Violet alone on the ranch. She had prepared a special dinner, roasting a chicken and making an apple pie with fruit from a tree near the barn. They ate on the porch, enjoying the crisp evening air and the spectacular sunset. The conversation flowed easily, as it always did, touching on everything from horse breeding to books to memories of childhood. After dinner, Violet served the pie with coffee and Cole closed his eyes in appreciation at the first bite. "This is incredible," he said. "You have so many talents, Violet. Cooking, bookkeeping, horse handling. Is there anything you cannot do?" "Plenty," she laughed. I cannot rope a steer or play a musical instrument or speak another language like Miguel. You are learning Spanish from him, though, Cole pointed out. I have heard you practicing. Trying to learn, Violet corrected. Miguel is very patient with my terrible pronunciation. They fell into comfortable silence, sipping coffee and watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Finally, Cole set down his cup and turned to face her fully. Violet, I need to talk to you about something. His serious tone made her nervous. What is it? I have been thinking about the future, about the ranch and what I want from life. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. When I bought your ring that day in the general store, I told you it would remind me of what I was working toward. Love, family, a home. I have the home now, but the other pieces are still missing. Violet's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Cole, let me finish, he said gently. I know it has only been a few months, and I know you are still recovering from losing Thomas. But I cannot keep pretending that I see you only as an employee or even just a friend. You are the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing on my mind before I sleep. I love talking with you, working alongside you, just being near you. I think I have been falling in love with you since the moment I saw you standing in that store, holding your wedding ring with such dignity despite your desperation. Violet could hardly breathe. Everything she had been feeling, all the emotions she had tried to suppress, came flooding to the surface. I feel the same way, she whispered. I have been trying not to, telling myself it is too soon and too complicated, but I cannot help it. You make me feel alive again, Cole. You make me want to take risks and embrace the future instead of hiding from it. Cole reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. The touch was electric, more intimate than any kiss. I am not asking you to rush into anything, he said. I just needed you to know how I feel, to understand that when I look at you, I see my future. I see partnership and passion, everything I told you the best relationships should have. What happens now? Violet asked, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. Now we take it slow, Cole said. We keep talking, spending time together, letting these feelings grow naturally. And when you are ready, when enough time has passed that you feel comfortable with it, I would like to court you properly. Take you to dinner in town, go for walks, all the traditional things a man does when he is trying to win a woman's heart. You already have my heart, Violet said, the truth of it ringing clear in her voice. But I appreciate your willingness to go slow. I do not want people to think I did not respect my marriage to Thomas, even though it was not a grand passion. He deserves to be remembered with honor. Of course, Cole agreed. We will do this right, with respect for the past and hope for the future. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was courtly and sweet, making Violet feel cherished in a way she never had before. They sat together on the porch until the night grew cold, holding hands and talking about their hopes and dreams. When Violet finally made her way back to the cabin, she felt as if she was floating. Everything had changed in the space of one conversation, and yet nothing had changed at all. She still had her work, her independence, her own space. But now she also had the promise of love, real love, the kind she had never experienced before. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happiness. Cole and Violet continued their evening conversations, but now they held hands openly, stealing occasional kisses that left them both breathless. True to his word, Cole courted her properly, taking her to church on Sundays where they sat together and fielded curious looks from the townspeople, treating her to dinner at the hotel restaurant in Keeler, bringing her small gifts like wildflowers or interesting rocks he found on his rides. The hired men noticed the change but said nothing. though Dutch smiled knowingly and Miguel offered his congratulations in his charmingly accented English. Mrs. Patterson gave her blessing, noting that Violet had mourned appropriately and deserved happiness again. In December, Cole took Violet to the spot on the ranch he loved most, a small rise that overlooked the valley with views of the mountains and the lake. The winter landscape was austere but beautiful, browns and grays punctuated by the green of hardy shrubs and the white of snow on distant peaks. "I come here when I need to think," Cole said, helping her down from the horse they had ridden together. "It reminds me of how big the world is and how lucky I am to have found my place in it." "It is beautiful," Violet agreed, turning in a slow circle to take in the view. "Violet Jenkins," Cole said, pulling something from his pocket. "I know it has not been quite a year since Thomas died, and I know some people will say we are rushing. But I am 30 years old, and I have spent enough of my life waiting for the right moment. You are what I want, what I have always wanted even before I knew you existed. You are my partner, my best friend, and the love of my life." He opened his palm to reveal her wedding ring, the one he had bought from her in the general store. "I know you sold this because you had to, but I bought it because I could not stand to see you part with something so meaningful. I have carried it with me every day since, a reminder of what brought us together and what I was working toward." He dropped to one knee, looking up at her with such love that Violet felt tears spring to her eyes. "I want to give it back to you, not as a memory of the past, but as a promise for the future. Will you marry me, Violet? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making you happy?" Violet could hardly see through her tears, but she did not need to see to know her answer. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Cole, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it felt right there, transformed from a symbol of loss to a promise of new beginnings. Cole stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the passion and tenderness that had been building between them for months. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and laughing, Violet looked at the ring on her finger and marveled at the strange twists of fate that had brought them to this moment. "I cannot believe you kept it all this time," she said. "I told you it was valuable to me," Cole replied, pulling her close again. "It represented everything I wanted, and now I have it. I have you." They set the wedding date for February, giving Violet a full year of mourning and time to prepare properly. The announcement was met with general approval in Keeler, though a few busybodies whispered about unseemly haste. Violet found she did not care. She had lived too long worried about others' opinions, and she was done letting fear and propriety dictate her choices. Mrs. Patterson helped her make a new dress for the wedding, a beautiful blue wool that brought out the color of her eyes. Cole bought a new suit from the general store's catalog, looking handsome and slightly uncomfortable in the formal clothing when it arrived. The wedding took place on a cold February morning in 1884, in the small church in Keeler with a handful of friends and neighbors as witnesses. Violet walked down the aisle alone, her head held high, to where Cole waited with Dutch as his best man. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, and when the reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed her with such joy that several people in the congregation laughed with delight. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with food and music and dancing that lasted well into the evening. Miguel played guitar, Dutch told outrageous stories from his cowboy days, and Jim actually smiled, a rare occurrence that made everyone take notice. As the last guests departed and the winter stars blazed overhead, Cole swept Violet into his arms and carried her across the threshold of the main house, which was now officially her home. "Welcome home, Mrs. Zimmerman," he said, setting her gently on her feet in their bedroom. "It feels strange to be called that," Violet admitted. But good strange. Right. Everything about this feels right, Cole agreed, pulling her close. From the moment I saw you in that store, I knew you were going to change my life. I just did not realize how completely. Their wedding night was everything Violet had never experienced with Thomas. Passionate and tender, playful and profound. Cole made her feel beautiful and desired, taking his time to explore and worship her body, making sure her pleasure matched his own. It was a revelation, this physical expression of their emotional connection, and Violet understood for the first time what all the romantic poetry was actually describing. The next morning, lying in Cole's arms as dawn light filtered through the curtains, Violet felt a contentment she had never imagined possible. This was what marriage should be, a partnership of equals who genuinely loved and desired each other. The months that followed were the happiest of Violet's life. She and Cole ran the ranch together, true partners in every sense. The horse breeding program thrived, with several successful sales that brought in good income. They expanded the operation, buying more land and hiring additional help as needed. In May, Violet realized she was pregnant. The discovery filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She had not conceived during her marriage to Thomas, and she had half convinced herself that children were not in her future. The news changed everything. Cole was ecstatic when she told him, sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing. He immediately began planning, converting one of the spare rooms into a nursery, building a cradle from wood he carefully selected and sanded smooth. "Boy or girl, it does not matter to me," he said, one hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. "As long as you and the baby are healthy, I will be the happiest man alive." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer and fall. Violet continued to help with the ranch work, though Cole and the hired men insisted she take it easy and rest often. She found herself content to sit in the shade and do the bookkeeping while others handled the physical labor. In January of 1885, during a cold snap that frosted the windows and dusted the valley with snow, Violet went into labor. Mrs. Patterson attended her, along with a midwife from town, while Cole paced anxiously downstairs, driving Dutch and the others crazy with his nervous energy. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Violet endured it with gritted teeth and determination, drawing on reserves of strength she did not know she possessed. Finally, as the sun set on the second day, a baby's cry filled the house. "It is a boy," Mrs. Patterson called down the stairs. "A healthy baby boy." Cole took the stairs 2 at a time, bursting into the bedroom to find Violet propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. "Meet your son," Violet said softly, her voice hoarse from hours of labor. Cole approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the red-faced infant in her arms. His expression transformed, love and wonder and fierce protectiveness all washing over his features at once. "He is perfect," Cole whispered, reaching out to touch the baby's tiny hand. The infant's fingers wrapped around his thumb and Cole let out a shaky breath. "Absolutely perfect. What should we name him?" Violet asked, though they had discussed names for months. "I would like to name him Thomas," Cole said, surprising her, "after your first husband. He would have loved to have a son, and it seems right to honor him this way." Violet felt tears spring to her eyes at his generosity. "Thomas Cole Zimmerman. Perfect," Cole agreed, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "You did amazingly, Violet. I am so proud of you, and I love you more than words can express." "I love you too," Violet replied, looking down at their son. "I love both of you so much." Thomas was a healthy, happy baby who thrived under his parents' devoted attention. Violet marveled at how different motherhood felt with a supportive partner. Cole took his turn walking the floor with a crying infant in the middle of the night, changed diapers without complaint, and looked at both his wife and son with such adoration that Violet sometimes felt overwhelmed by her good fortune. The ranch continued to prosper. By 1887, they had expanded significantly, with 30 horses and a growing reputation for quality stock. They hired more permanent help and built additional housing for the workers. Cole's dream of establishing a successful ranch had become reality, surpassing even his initial ambitions. In the spring of 1888, Violet discovered she was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, and in November, she gave birth to a daughter they named Sarah Grace, choosing Sarah after Cole's mother and Grace simply because they both loved the name. Watching Cole with his daughter, seeing the gentle way he held her and the songs he sang to get her to sleep, Violet fell in love with him all over again. He was everything she could have hoped for in a husband and father, patient and kind, strong and dependable, passionate and tender. The years passed in a happy blur of hard work and family life. Thomas grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved the horses and followed his father everywhere. Sarah was more bookish, preferring to sit with her mother and practice her letters or listen to stories. In 1891, when Violet was 30, they had another son they named William after Cole's grandfather. The house rang with children's laughter and the sounds of a busy, productive ranch. They added on to the main house, building more bedrooms and a larger kitchen to accommodate their growing family. One evening in the fall of 1893, after the children were in bed and the ranch was quiet, Cole and Violet sat on the porch as they had done so many times over the years. The view never got old, the mountains and valley eternal in their beauty. "You ever think about that day in the general store?" Violet asked, leaning against Cole's shoulder. "All the time," he admitted. "It was the luckiest day of my life seeing you standing there with that ring. I knew I had to do something, though I did not fully understand why at the time. I was so desperate," Violet remembered, "so scared and lost. I thought selling the ring was the end of everything, but it turned out to be the beginning." "Funny how life works," Cole mused. "The worst moments can lead to the best outcomes if we are brave enough to keep going." Violet thought about how far they had come from that desperate day. She was no longer the frightened widow selling her last possession for food. She was a wife, a mother, a partner in a successful business, and most importantly, she was deeply, completely loved. No regrets. She asked, turning to look at her husband's face, still handsome at 41, weathered by sun and wind but beloved in every line and feature. "Not a single one," Cole replied firmly. "Except maybe that I did not find you sooner. But we have the rest of our lives together, and I plan to make every day count." He pulled the ring from his pocket, something he still carried with him as a good luck charm and reminder, even though Violet now wore it on her finger. He had formed a habit of taking it off her hand sometimes, just to hold it and remember. "This ring brought us together," he said, slipping it back onto her finger where it belonged. "Your wedding ring from Thomas became our wedding ring, a symbol of how love can transform and renew us if we let it." "I used to think I knew what love was," Violet said softly. "I cared for Thomas and I mourned him sincerely. But what we have, Cole, this is love on a completely different level. This is the kind of love that makes life worth living." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge and listening to the night sounds of the ranch they had built together. Inside the house, their children slept safely. The horses dozed in the barn. The land stretched out around them, productive and beautiful. As the years continued to pass, the Zimmerman Ranch became one of the most respected operations in the Owens Valley. Cole's skill with horses was legendary, and people came from all over California and Nevada to purchase his stock. Violet managed the business side with skill and efficiency. Her books always balanced, her contracts fair but profitable. Thomas Jr. showed such promise with the horses that Cole began training him in earnest when he turned 12. The boy had his mother's gentle touch and his father's natural understanding of the animals, a combination that served him well. Sarah developed a talent for sketching and painting, capturing the beauty of their ranch and the surrounding landscape in ways that made people stop and stare. William was still too young to show where his talents lay, but he was curious about everything, asking endless questions and exploring every corner of the ranch. In 1895, Violet gave birth to twins, another boy and a girl they named Daniel and Rose. The house was chaos with 5 children, but it was joyful chaos, full of love and laughter. Cole built another addition onto the house, joking that they would need to expand the ranch just to house their growing family. By 1900, as the new century dawned, Cole and Violet had been married for 16 years. Thomas Jr. was 18 and essentially running the training operation alongside his father. Sarah was 12, a talented artist who had already sold several paintings to visitors from back east. William at 9 was proving to be mechanically inclined, always tinkering with equipment and finding ways to improve the ranch's efficiency. The twins were 5, already showing distinct personalities, Daniel bold and adventurous, Rose thoughtful and sweet. One summer evening, with all the children occupied with their various pursuits, Cole took Violet's hand and led her to their special spot on the rise overlooking the valley. They rode together on the same horse they had ridden that December day when he proposed, the animal now old but still steady and sure-footed. "Why the mystery?" Violet asked, though she was smiling. Cole's spontaneous gestures were one of the things she loved most about him. "No mystery," Cole replied. "I just wanted to spend time with my wife, away from the beautiful chaos of our life." They sat on the rise as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The valley spread below them, their ranch a thriving operation that had exceeded all their expectations. "I have been thinking," Cole said, his arm around Violet's shoulders, "about that $50 I gave you for your ring." "That was the best investment you ever made," Violet teased, knowing where he was going. "It truly was," Cole agreed seriously. "But I was thinking about the actual money. $50 for a ring worth maybe 12. I overpaid by $38. "You did," Violet acknowledged, wondering what point he was making. "That $38 bought me the courage to talk to you, to offer you a job, to get to know you. It bought us time together that led to everything we have now. 5 children, a successful ranch, a love that grows stronger every year." He paused, pulling something from his pocket. "I have been thinking about what $38 can buy, what kind of return on investment it can bring. And I realized that the best investments are not in land or livestock or even gold. They are in people, in love, in taking chances on what really matters." He opened his hand to reveal a delicate gold locket on a chain. Violet gasped when she saw it. "I had this made special," Cole said. "Open it." Inside the locket were 2 tiny photographs, one of Cole and one of all 5 children. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the images clear despite their small size. "Cole, this is beautiful," Violet breathed. "But what brought this on?" "I just wanted to remind you that you are loved," Cole said, fastening the locket around her neck. "By me, by our children, by everyone whose life you have touched. You walked into that general store 16 years ago with nothing but a ring and your dignity, and look what you have built. Look what we have built together. Violet touched the locket, feeling its weight against her heart. We have built something wonderful, have we not? We have built everything I ever dreamed of and more, Cole confirmed. And I fall more in love with you every single day. You are my partner, my best friend, the mother of my children, and the love of my life. I just wanted you to know that, to understand how grateful I am that you took a chance on the cowboy who overpaid for your ring. I am grateful too, Violet said, tears streaming down her face, happy tears that reflected the overwhelming emotion of the moment. For your kindness that day, for your patience as I learned to love again, for every moment we have shared since. You saved my life, Cole, and then you made it worth living. They held each other as the stars emerged, the same stars that had witnessed their wedding night and every significant moment since. The ranch sounds drifted up to them, the horses whinnying, the children's distant voices, the everyday music of the life they had created. As they rode back to the house, Violet thought about the journey that had brought them here. The tragedy of losing Thomas, the desperation that drove her to sell her ring, the unexpected kindness of a stranger who saw value where others saw only desperation. Every step, every choice, every moment of pain and joy had led them to this life, this love, this beautiful, messy, perfect family. Over the years that followed, the Zimmerman ranch continued to thrive. Thomas Jr. married a local rancher's daughter in 1903, and they built a house on the property to start their own family. Sarah's artwork became well known enough that a gallery in San Francisco offered to represent her, though she chose to stay in the Owens Valley, preferring the beauty and peace of home. William eventually took over the mechanical and business operations of the ranch, his innovations making them one of the most efficient operations in the region. The twins found their own paths, Daniel becoming a veterinarian and Rose a teacher who opened a school on the ranch for the children of the workers and neighboring families. By 1915, Cole and Violet were grandparents several times over, the ranch compound expanding to house their children's families and the growing operation. They had weathered droughts and economic downturns, personal losses and challenges, but their love had remained constant, the foundation upon which everything else was built. On a warm evening in June of that year, as they celebrated their 31st wedding anniversary with their children and grandchildren gathered around, Violet looked at the ring on her finger and marveled once again at the journey it represented. Cole caught her looking and smiled, that same transformative smile that had captured her heart so many years ago. He reached across the table to take her hand, and she gave it gladly, their fingers intertwining with the easy familiarity of decades together. "What are you thinking?" he asked, though he probably knew. "I am thinking about how blessed I am," Violet replied honestly. "How a moment of desperation led to a lifetime of joy. How selling a ring for food brought me the greatest feast imaginable, a life overflowing with love." "I am the blessed one," Cole countered gently. "I was just a lonely cowboy with a dream and some money in my pocket. You gave me purpose and meaning, family and home, love beyond measure." Their eldest grandchild, Thomas Jr.'s son Christopher, piped up from down the table. "Tell us the story again, Grandma, about how Grandpa bought the ring." The children always loved this story, and Violet and Cole exchanged amused glances before launching into the familiar tale. They told it together, filling in details for each other, their voices weaving the narrative of that August day in 1883 when two lonely souls found each other in the most unexpected way. As Violet spoke, she looked around the table at the fruits of that chance meeting. children and grandchildren, a legacy of love that would continue long after she and Cole were gone. She thought about the girl she had been, desperate and afraid, willing to sell the symbol of her marriage just to survive another week. She could never have imagined then that the cowboy who bought her ring would buy her heart as well, that his generous overpayment would be returned 1,000-fold in love and happiness. That night, after the celebration ended and the house quieted, Cole and Violet walked out to the porch, their steps slower now with age but still steady. The view was unchanged, the eternal mountains and valley as beautiful as ever. "You remember the first time we sat here together?" Cole asked, settling into his favorite chair and pulling Violet down onto his lap despite her laughing protests that they were too old for such foolishness. "Of course I remember," Violet replied, leaning against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. "You told me about Sarah, the girl who broke your heart, and I told you about my marriage to Thomas. I think that was the night I started to fall in love with you, though I did not admit it to myself yet." "I knew that night that I was in trouble," Cole admitted. "I had hired you to help with the ranch, but all I wanted to do was sit and talk with you for hours. I had to keep reminding myself to maintain proper boundaries, to give you time and space to heal. Your patience was one of the things I loved most about you," Violet said. "You never pushed, never demanded more than I was ready to give. You let me come to you in my own time." "It was not always easy," Cole confessed. "There were nights I lay awake, terrified that you would never see me as more than an employer or a friend. But I also knew that real love was worth waiting for, worth the risk of heartbreak. And now here we are," Violet marveled. 31 years later, still sitting on this porch, still talking until the stars come out." "Some things never change," Cole agreed, "and some things get better with time. I love you more now than I did on our wedding day, and I loved you desperately then." "I love you more too," Violet said softly. "Age and experience have taught me to appreciate what we have, to never take it for granted. Every day with you is a gift." They sat in peaceful silence, watching the night sky and listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch settling down for the evening. In the distance, a coyote called and horses shuffled in the barn. A light still burned in Thomas Jr.'s house, and Violet could see Sarah's shadow moving past a window in her cottage. "We did well, did we not?" Cole asked quietly. "Raised good children, built a good life, created something that will outlast us." "We did wonderfully," Violet confirmed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible when I was standing in that general store, trying not to cry as I sold the only valuable thing I owned." Cole shifted slightly, reaching into his pocket with his free hand. He pulled out the ring, which he still carried with him always, even though Violet wore it on her finger. "How do you have it if I am wearing it?" Violet asked, confused, then laughed when she looked at her hand and realized he had slipped it off without her noticing. "You old thief." "Just borrowing it for a moment," Cole said with a grin. He held it up to catch the light from the house. "This ring has been part of our story from the very beginning. It represented your past with Thomas, my investment in our future, and everything we have built together. I think it deserves one more moment in the spotlight." "What do you mean?" Violet asked, curious about what he was planning. "I want to give it to Thomas Jr.," Cole said, "to pass on to Christopher when he is old enough to marry. Let it continue to be a symbol of love and commitment for future generations. Let our grandchildren and great-grandchildren know the story of how their family began, how desperation and kindness combined to create something beautiful." Violet felt tears spring to her eyes at the thought. "That is a wonderful idea. Thomas would be proud to carry on the tradition, and Christopher is already such a romantic boy. He will love knowing the history." "We will tell him the whole story," Cole said. about Thomas Jenkins who died too young, about a desperate widow and a cowboy with more money than sense, about taking chances on love even when it seems impossible. We will tell him that the best things in life are worth investing in, worth fighting for, worth the risk of heartbreak. We will tell him that love can heal even the deepest wounds, Violet added, that it is never too late to start over, to take a chance, to believe in happiness again. Cole slipped the ring back onto her finger where it belonged. But not yet. For now, it is still ours, still part of our story. We have earned the right to keep it a while longer. They remained on the porch until late, talking about their life together, their children and grandchildren, their hopes for the future. When they finally went inside to bed, they moved through the familiar house with the ease of long practice, each knowing where the other would be and what they needed. In their bedroom, Cole helped Violet with her buttons as he had done for 31 years, the gesture both practical and tender. She helped him with his boots, laughing at his groan of relief when they came off. They prepared for bed with the comfortable synchronization of a long marriage, moving around each other in the small space with practiced efficiency. When they finally settled under the covers, Cole pulled Violet close, her head resting on his shoulder as it had for thousands of nights before. "Happy anniversary, my love," he murmured, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Happy anniversary," Violet replied, her hand resting over his heart. "Thank you for buying my ring all those years ago. Thank you for buying my heart along with it." "Best purchase I ever made," Cole said drowsily. $50 for a lifetime of love. I would pay it 1,000 times over." As they drifted off to sleep, Violet thought about the young widow she had been, and the woman she had become. The journey from desperation to contentment, from merely surviving to truly living, had been made possible by the kindness of a stranger who became the love of her life. The ring on her finger caught the moonlight streaming through the window, a circle of gold that had come to represent so much more than a simple piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of perseverance and hope, of love's power to transform and redeem, of the unexpected ways that life could surprise you if you were brave enough to take chances. In the years that followed, Cole and Violet continued to enjoy their life together, watching their family grow and prosper. They faced the inevitable challenges of age with grace and humor, supporting each other through illness and loss, celebrating triumphs and milestones with genuine joy. In 1920, they celebrated their 36th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The ranch had evolved with the times, incorporating new technologies while maintaining the core values that Cole and Violet had established: quality stock, fair dealing, and respect for both animals and people. During the celebration, Cole presented the ring to Thomas Jr. in a touching ceremony that brought tears to many eyes. He told the story of buying it from Violet in the general store, of carrying it as a reminder of his goals and dreams, of using it to propose to the love of his life. Thomas Jr. accepted it with appropriate reverence, promising to pass it on to Christopher when the time came, ensuring that the symbol of their family's beginning would continue through generations. "This ring represents more than just the start of our family," Cole told the assembled crowd. "It represents the power of kindness, the importance of taking chances, and the truth that sometimes our darkest moments lead to our greatest blessings. Your grandmother was desperate enough to sell her wedding ring for food, and I was fortunate enough to be there to help. That moment of intersection changed both our lives forever and created the legacy you are all part of." Violet added her own thoughts, her voice strong despite her 70 years. "I want you all to remember that it is never too late to start over, to find love, to build something meaningful. When I sold this ring, I thought my life was over. But it was just beginning. Be brave enough to take chances, kind enough to help others, and wise enough to recognize love when it finds you." The family cheered and applauded, and the celebration continued late into the night. But eventually, as they always did, Cole and Violet found themselves on the porch, watching the stars and talking quietly. "We have had a good run," Cole said, though there was nothing sad in his tone, only contentment. "We have had a wonderful run," Violet corrected. "And it is not over yet. We still have years ahead of us, God willing, and I intend to enjoy every moment with you." "Every moment," Cole agreed, raising her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. "I have loved you for 36 years, Violet Zimmerman, and I will love you for however many more we are blessed to have." They sat in comfortable silence, two people who had shared most of their adult lives and still found joy in each other's company. The ranch was quiet around them, the children and grandchildren settled in their various homes, the horses resting in the barn, the valley peaceful under the stars. As the night deepened, they finally made their way to bed, moving slowly but surely, supporting each other as they had always done. In their room, they prepared for sleep with the ease of long practice, and when they finally settled under the covers, Cole pulled Violet close. "Do you remember that first night I kissed you?" he asked, his voice soft in the darkness. "Of course," Violet replied. "It was after you proposed up on the rise. The stars were out and you looked at me like I was the most precious thing in the world." "You were," Cole said simply. "You are. Every single day, you are the most precious thing in my world." "And you are mine," Violet whispered, pressing a kiss to his jaw. "My unexpected blessing, my second chance, my great love." They held each other as sleep claimed them. Two souls who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built a life that exceeded all their dreams. The ring that had brought them together had been passed on, but its legacy lived on in the family they had created and the love they had shared. Cole and Violet Zimmerman lived out their days on the ranch they had built together, surrounded by the family that was their greatest achievement. They saw the world change dramatically, from the wild frontier of their youth to the modern age of automobiles and electric lights. But their love remained constant, a touchstone in a changing world. When Cole passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1925 at the age of 73, Violet grieved deeply, but without bitterness. They had been blessed with 41 years of marriage, 5 children, numerous grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and a love that had sustained them through all of life's trials. She continued to live on the ranch, cared for by her family, sharing stories of the past and wisdom earned through decades of living well. Violet lived to the remarkable age of 85, passing away in 1933, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. Her last words were reported to be about Cole, saying she could see him waiting for her, ready to resume the conversation they had started so many years ago on the porch of their ranch. The ring continued through the family as Cole had wished, passed from Thomas Jr. to Christopher, who gave it to his own son, each generation learning the story of the desperate widow and the kind cowboy whose chance meeting in a general store created a legacy of love. The Zimmerman Ranch remained in the family, a testament to what could be built when courage met kindness, when desperation met generosity, when two lonely hearts found each other against all odds. And though many years have passed since that August day in 1883, when Violet Jenkins stood in a general store with her wedding ring, ready to trade her past for her survival, the story lives on. It is a reminder that our darkest moments can lead to our greatest blessings, that kindness can change lives, and that love, real love, is always worth the risk. The widow sold her wedding ring for food, but the cowboy bought it in her heart, and in doing so, they both found everything they had been searching for.